How are you doing today, my lazies? Today I'm going to be explaining something that has become more increasingly popular now with the introduction of the MCU making this notion more popular. Shows like The Boys and Invincible that make this more apparent, and even the classics of people making heroes seem more like menaces. This video is going to be me explaining different ways you can actually convict a hero. I will also be explaining some of the misconceptions people have with this topic given the laws of different eras. Let's dive in. So, vigilantes aren't technically illegal, at least not in most areas. The US, for example, has many citizen arrest laws that allow the average citizen to act as a police force should they deem it necessary. You can even claim self-defense in cases of more extreme circumstances. The citizen's arrest actually dates back to medieval times where sheriffs would encourage law-abiding citizens to help apprehend lawbreakers. Vigilantism isn't necessarily a crime unless certain factors are in play. So, being a vigilante isn't illegal as long as you're a citizen of the country you're practicing in, follow the same rules as the police in that area, and don't go around murdering people unnecessarily like a psychopath. Murder is only allowed in extreme cases of self-defense, and is only a last resort option if deemed necessary by the laws of the area you're practicing vigilantism. Extreme force is barely allowed, so murder is highly sensitive when it comes to being a vigilante. How does vigilantism work with heroes though? It all depends on the situation. Say a street level hero wants to be a vigilante without powers, they'd have to follow the stringent rules I've listed before and more depending on the area they're in. People like Batman, Green Arrow, Punisher, and more skim the line of vigilante and criminal constantly. While what they do is technically a citizen's arrest, more extreme cases like Punisher are huge gray areas that make people that act the way he does in these situations seem more like criminals than heroes. This is where we start to get the difference between an anti-hero and a vigilante. Which one is truly illegal and why? Well, vigilantism is already established not to be illegal, so why would anti-hero antics be considered illegal? Well, because they cross those lines that the heroes always talk about in shows and comics. This type of behavior gives others, whether they have good intentions or not, the impression that they can be judge, jury, and executioner as long as they feel they're protecting people. Basically, look at these actions like, if an idiot or someone truly disturbed in the head saw me doing this, would I feel comfortable allowing them to reenact what I did? This is the logic behind vigilante versus anti-hero. An anti-hero would inspire murderers and psychopaths to go around doing whatever they want and just claim, I'm a hero. Whereas a vigilante would inspire people that want actual justice and change in their corrupt society. Coin flip situation, honestly. Now, here's where the majority of lawsuits would come in, no matter the outcome of something like heroes fending off an alien invasion, or stopping an army of terrorists from invading, or any destructive battle situation you can think of. The big question after everything is done is, who do we blame and how much do they owe? Imagine a Winter Soldier situation. Who's to blame for all the damage he's caused? Is it Bucky? Is it Russia? Is it an unknown terrorist organization? And does Steve Rogers get convicted as well for aiding and abetting? What about Hulk or Superman destroying countless people's property during their heavyweight destructive battles? What about that scene in Shang-Chi where the bus was stopped by crushing entire blocks worth of cars. See, in the moment we watch, we look at these things like, that's epic, or that's cool, or that's badass, but then no one actually thinks, what if this was my property? Would you feel the same about the Avengers or Justice League if your house was totaled? Or maybe that new car that you just bought? How about your wife getting crushed by debris before she could give birth to your first child? Dark scenarios, I know, but really think about every potential thing that could happen during these crazy escapades. How much damage would the Avengers pay to rebuild Novigrad, Sokovia after dropping the entire city back into the ocean? And how much would they pay to rebuild the other cities affected by the geological events that will have occurred from large debris smacking back into the ocean from the clouds? Let's actually calculate how much these damages would cost. For a house, it would cost 100 to 200 per square foot for an average home the size of at least 2,600 square feet, and then around $200 to $500 per square foot for luxury homes at least 8,000 square feet. Using the more available estimate for car damages, to replace at least a 2016 Toyota Camry bumper would be around $350 to $450, and that's an older and cheaper model car. The average paint job would cost around $300 to $7,000. Windshield repairs are a bit more interesting. A crack would only cost $110, while a replacement would cost around $410, and for luxury, that's around $4,414 for windshield repairs alone. Now, moving on to even more specific components, we have strut or shock absorber replacements costing around $448 to $597 on average. Wheel alignments are on average between $105 to $302. Ball joint replacements are around $225 to $285. A rear end damage cost average around $10K or more for just a bent frame. Looking beyond cars and buildings, we have asphalt repairs around $250 to $6,000 depending on the damage. Sidewalks would be $9 per square foot, and the average sidewalk is about 120 square feet. Moving to people, for mild body damage, we're looking at around $2,500 to $10K, while more serious injuries are over $30K, and the dread soft tissue injuries are around $100,000. For low property damage costs, we're looking at around $1,875,668 at the very least, while high property damage would be at least $4,650,128. The next estimates only include one of each of these categories. So assuming a small city was destroyed, we're looking at about $2,813,502,000 to $6,975,192,000 on average for small city sizes. For average large cities, we're looking at around $187,566,800,000 to $465,012,800,000. These are just raw estimates of the biggest damages, not even including the smaller things added to the cost like pipelines or electric grids or energy costs or anything like that. The top 5 billionaires today alone could barely afford any of these damages, especially the highest cost I calculated. Together, they'd still barely make a dent without ruining their billionaire status. To put into perspective the sheer cost of what I calculated, as of 2020, the world's GDP was around 90,519,610,000,000. Those costs are around 0.003% to 0.5% of the world's GDP. Looking at the highest GDP country in 2020, America's GDP was around 21,990,000,000,000, which is around 24% of the world's GDP. And these costs dented at around 0.02% to 2.1% of America's GDP as of 2020. Musk and Bezos would hyperspeed their plans to get to Mars if they were ever faced with crisis like that. To put into perspective, hero-wise, these are the top 5 wealthiest heroes and characters of all time from every media so far. Scrooge McDuck with a net worth of $65.4 billion at number 5. Lex Luthor with a net worth of $75 billion at number 4. Bruce Wayne with a net worth of $80 billion at number 3. Mr. Stark with a whopping $100 billion at number 2, which would make him the 9th richest man in 2022, above Larry Ellison at an estimated $94.6 billion, and right below Steve Ballmer at an estimated $107 billion, putting him in the top 10 today still. And then there's the King of Wakanda with the most expensive resource in comics Earth existence, with an estimated $90.7 trillion, which would put him above the 2020 world GDP itself alone. For the lowest damage cost, you'd need to be richer than Emma Frost from the X-Men at the very least, with her net worth of $3 billion. And at the most, you'd need to be at least 5 times richer than Tony Stark just to repair a large city. If I was a hero with money like the top 5 in our world or a fictional one, I'd only fight in small cities or off planet. My wallet couldn't handle the anxiety of possibly destroying a large city, let alone a country or a continent. I'd be mining that gold asteroid Elon found each time there was a huge battle on the planet. And now Spider-Man Homecoming makes more sense in why the Stark cleanup crew were so aggressive with Vulture's team during the New York invasion. Stark wanted to salvage the damage caused as a way to do community service before he's able to be convicted for a situation he wasn't in control of. Instead of paying these ridiculous prices, he created a cleanup crew to earn back all the money he paid or was going to pay for the damages to the city. Imagine the cost of destroying Manhattan, New York City. Now imagine the profit of repairing Manhattan, New York City with the best tech company in the world. Genius level thinking. So for this section, we'll be going over the other crazy laws that would affect not only street level heroes, but even some of the powered ones. One such law I'll briefly explain deals with something most people don't think about often because it's become such a norm now, and that's child endangerment. Yes, having a sidekick is illegal unless you're as rich as Bruce Wayne. Having a child sidekick, I don't think I have to convince you, would be a large enough conviction for a hero. Children under 16 years of age could sue heroes like Batman, Green Arrow, Superman, MCU, Tony Stark, and the list goes on with heroes that have child sidekicks. If any of those kids were to resent any of these heroes enough at any point in their life, say like Red Hood in the animated DC movie Batman Under the Red Hood, they could actually sue these heroes and expose their secret identities without having to expose their own. Robin, Superboy, Arsenal, Kid Flash, and more could just side with someone trying to take down their respective mentors by bringing to light that they're underaged. They wouldn't even need to expose anyone's identity. They could make anyone dressed as their respective mentors or other masked vigilantes illegal in their city altogether. The parents of these children, or even the city themselves, could sue these heroes for child endangerment if they wanted to. A fine line that would be a slap on the wrist for the richer heroes, as it's only up to $10,000. But depending on their secret identity, they would be facing at least up to 6 years in prison. Ironically enough, teams like the Young Avengers, Young Justice, and even Teen Titans wouldn't fall under this law, as they're technically seen as independent from their respective larger adult hero teams. This is made very clear in Young Justice when they refer to the Young Team as a covert ops team separate from the League every time they're in the news. When they turned into the Outsiders, they even had most of the kids become emancipated minors or got written permission from their parents to let them join the team so they can't get sued from this law. Another special law that could affect more of the heroes you'd believe are more off limits due to jurisdiction is the refugee laws of each country. Now, I remember Supergirl actually doing an entire season on this, and it was my favorite season of that entire series. The way they juggled this law and its parameters was brilliantly executed. Before, if you saw aliens arriving on these Earths from different fictional media, you look at governments like they're crazy for wanting to regulate someone like Superman or Martian Manhunter or even Thor, but then look at it from the opposite perspective. What if you were the ones affected by these crazy battles these super aliens have that damage your property and severely harm or even kill your loved ones? What do they answer to? And who pays for the alien refugees? Some of these aliens even bring their conflicts to these mini Earths, and the humans are the ones that suffer because Earth gets damaged and these guys just get to leave with no consequences. In Snyder's Batman v Superman, they reference Superman being immune to punishment even though his battle with Zod was leveling an entire city. He actually went into hiding per se and only stood trial after he was forced to by the public. Even after Lex bombed the courthouse to try to kill him, Superman just left after saving a few people. Even he came to the conclusion that maybe aliens from other planets need to be under some kind of regulation. Notice that even in Young Justice they reference alien rights and regulations in Season 2 with the Reach and the regulation of the Justice League superpowered aliens that get to just leave off-world after leveling cities or countries or worse. If there are too many superpowered aliens or just highly intelligent alien refugees in general on the planet, each country could create their own refugee laws with very minimal resistance from the citizens, considering the damage numbers I previously stated and the terror of what comes with one of them going rogue. Every country would be in their rights to wage war on alien refugees if they don't comply with their citizenship laws. After seeing this become more of a trend in hero media, I've started to accept this type of law, considering if these were real beings on our real planet causing all of this real damage, Every human would be pissed at the destruction caused by these crazy battles. Now, here's one that may seem like a stretch at first, but Young Justice and even the CW Flash series made great points with this one. And when it was actually a good show, Black Lightning actually started adapting this trope too. And that trope is bioterrorism, or should we call them meta-human weapons of mass destruction. Now, yes, it's completely unfair to categorize someone as a WMD, especially when most of these heroes and villains don't ask for their powers. They're forced on them, or happen due to some uncontrollable coincidence. But it's still within every country's right to categorize a metahuman, enhanced human, or even an alien as a WMD. Now, for the negative reasons this type of law wouldn't be popular, it causes more discrimination as seen vividly in Black Lightning and Supergirl. The Flash actually created a solution for this problem, and it deals with these enhanced beings having the choice to keep their powers or not. Even in the super prisons in all of the hero media, or there's always a power dampener. That's a creative solution to stop this crazed idea from turning into the negative of extreme discrimination. At the same time though, it's not exactly safe for enhanced beings to want to keep their powers on Earth, considering the average human or being of natural Earth descent don't usually have powers, save the mysterious beings like Atlanteans or Amazonians. Again, look at it as a real situation instead of just a piece of fictional media for a second. Would you feel safe having an enhanced individual whose powers you don't know of or can't defend yourself against legally or physically roaming around when they could snap at any moment and just go on a rampage? Even if they're heroes, it's always safer to have contingencies first. I mean, look at Omni-Man from Invincible. Look at Superman in the Injustice verse. Look at the Batman who laughs. And should I keep listing powered individuals that went crazy? Why do you think even Batman has contingencies against people he actually trusts? Because you can't predict the future. Everyone changes throughout their life. Life isn't stagnant for humans, so why would we believe it's stagnant for a super being? This is why the Sokovia Accords were created in the MCU. Who regulates these individuals? They're all equivalent to a nuke or higher in threat level, and that's including the unpowered guys in masks and capes, shooting arrows like a caveman. All of these people are certified WMDs, so harboring a powered individual without having them registered could be considered terrorism. Not saying I personally trust an Earth government to regulate power individuals, but there needs to be some type of reassurance that if one goes crazy, there's a way to defend against them. Not to even get into the crazier implications of non-powered humans coveting these abilities, what happens if there is a pandemic of powers? Another interesting law to consider would be the invasion of property law. This one is kind of similar to the refugee law, but comes with different implications. This one could actually convict a hero in multiple ways, and not even just from the planet they call home, but other celestial bodies as well. Now, Young Justice actually touches on this in Season 2 with the missing 16 hours that Vandal Savage created with the founding members of the Justice League. Due to this incident, Earth residents were denied entry into multiple planets in the galaxy, and looking at groups like the Nova Corps or Green Lantern Corps, they even create planetary rules of travel. So what does this have to do with invasion of property, and how could this convict a hero? Well, let's say a hero registers as a citizen of an Earth government. That means they agree to follow Earth laws, which means they have to respect the boundaries placed by other countries outside of their own. Again, Young Justice and even the MCU touch on this multiple times. Young Justice more so displayed how limited the Justice League was due to these invasion laws placed by the UN. But let's dive a bit further. There's a woman in real life that actually purchases the moon and sued NASA for claiming just moon dust due to her legally owning most of the moon. No other country can even land on the moon without her permission. Elon and Bezos are even fighting over who would own what parts of the moon when they get their crafts there to launch their new space crusades. The significance of this is anyone can claim that a hero invaded their property even if they were there to save them specifically. This issue is actually brought up in several hero media where they go to a specific place and get sued for saving someone. The Incredibles actually kind of did this with Bob saving a man from committing suicide, and his life is his own property. So if he didn't want to be saved, should he be allowed to sue Mr. Incredible for invasion of property? I could make a whole video on invasion of property alone and all of its implications. Let's move on to another conviction, and this one is actually geared towards more of the rich heroes, but not limited to just them. This law is unauthorized commodities. Think about the secret layers these heroes have. Why do you think they're secret? Besides the obvious, they don't want villains knowing about them, villains often find these layers fairly quickly and easily compared to even the government, yet they still keep them a secret from the public. Why is that? Well, this is actually explored in the Dark Knight trilogy in Batman Begins. When Bruce is making his lair, he has the excavators blindfolded and flown overseas so they didn't even know where they were, and after they finished, he paid them in cash and flew them back home blindfolded. Why do that? In Young Justice, the planet didn't even know that the League had the Watchtower in orbit around the planet. Most heroes even try to make layers from abandoned buildings. Why go through all of this trouble? The short answer is secret layers are illegal. It's illegal to have a piece of secret property that should be taxable or violate some kind of zoning laws for the area of origin. The Watchtower is even more illegal as it's basically an illegal satellite or space station that isn't being taxed or regulated. And it doesn't help that it's a WMD with a space cannon laser. And think about what would have happened if the station was destroyed without warning. How would the people below be alerted or at least reduce casualties if none of the heroes with the ability to stop or alert quick enough are available? Let's even look at the abandoned building layers. What if someone buys the property and wants to demolish in order to rebuild? That layer would technically be their legal property now. Same for something like the Batcave. What happens if someone can legally buy the property area that the cave covers somehow, or it blocks something that someone legally owns now? That could be a huge lawsuit in itself. Without permits for these layers, they're illegal, unauthorized commodities, unfortunately. Even Superman's fortress would technically be illegal, even though it's in the middle of nowhere, essentially. One of the biggest laws, and the last one I'll mention for now, is misinformation. Even today, people are punished on social media and YouTube even for fake news. Any information that would be considered false news or spread of harmful information could get heroes like Spider-Man and Superman in huge trouble. Spider-Man is less likely to get sued for misinformation considering he doesn't run stories about himself, but Omni-Man, J. Jonah Jameson, can sue him for fraud, especially since Peter signed all the rights to Spider-Man over to Jameson, so he's the only one that can print anything about him. Clark is a different story as he actively shifts the public's perspective on Superman's deeds, which makes all of his journalism pertaining to Superman fraud, and misinformation. So everything I've just listed is but a mere fraction of the things heroes can get convicted for. The biggest and most common way to do it would be property damage, considering no hero fight ends without some level of property damage. Let me know your thoughts on the comments below though. If you like this concept, drop a like. Sub for more content like this and more. Share to others so we can grow the community and get some events going soon. But until next time, stay lazy.